Oh là là. Oh là là. Ça va aller. Gotta see the button. Gotta put this in front. Gonna hide the ears. Definitely infected à ce moment. Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue à Blabla Katie. My name is Katie and today we're going to blabla about how to pronounce the R in French. The French R is absolutely horrible for anglophones simply because the sound doesn't exist in English, so it's a very foreign sound for us to make. That being said, there are ways to improve and to practice that this sound becomes more natural for you, which is what we're going to get into in this video. Before we get into it, I do want to give you a quick disclaimer and let you know that the French R I'm going to be talking about is the one that comes from the Parisian dialect, which is most likely the French that you learned if you ever learned it from a textbook or in school. I say that because there are so many different dialects of French, not only in France, but also in other Francophone countries. And in some of these other dialects, the French R is pronounced differently. The reason why I'm going with the Parisian dialect is simply because that's what I learned and that's what I try to use when I speak. But this doesn't mean that the Parisian dialect is any more correct or better than any of the other dialects that do exist in French. So now that you've got the disclaimer, let's get started on how to pronounce the R in French. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to actually make this sound, I want to give you a sort of pre-assessment. You should be looking at a couple sentences in French that are pretty heavy on the R's. Take a couple seconds and just try to read these out loud. I'd recommend you take a recording of yourself speaking them because I will be giving you the same sentences at the end of this video to see how you've improved. Now that you've got your baseline, let's get into the mechanics of how to actually pronounce the French R. Like I said before, if you're a little confused, a little frustrated, that's totally normal, but the more that you practice this, the easier and more natural it will become. So the first thing you need to do is just forget the English R. When you make the English R, it's all the way up here in the front of the mouth. R. When you're speaking French, the R is actually all the way in the back. You want to think of it right here in the back of your throat. It doesn't have anything to do with the front of your mouth. The best way to practice how to pronounce the R in French is actually by gargling. So if you're not comfortable gargling on your own, just grab a glass of water and start gargling it. You should feel the sound right here, and it should sound like you're gargling water. Exactly like that. I know that it can be a little strange to do it first, but just keep practicing, and like I said, it will get easier. So that is how you actually create the sound. That is the fastest explanation for how to pronounce the R in French. But it's a different story when you put this isolated sound into words. For example, let's take the word rage, which in French is the same thing, just pronounced differently. It's rage. Rage. As you can hear, I'm making the gargling sound, rage, like that. The sound is coming from the back of my throat. It's not coming from anywhere else. But you need to be aware of the next vowel sound that comes immediately after the R. This is going to tell you how to form your mouth. Like I said before, the front of your mouth has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with pronouncing the French R. But it is super important when you're actually making sounds with R in them. So again, if we take rage, the vowel sound right after r is ah. That's how you're going to form your mouth as you pronounce the word together. So we have rage. You can see that my mouth is already prepared for the ah sound. If we were to take the word red in French, which is rouge, rouge, the vowel sound immediately after R is oo. So as you pronounce the r in the back of your throat, you're going to form your mouth in the next vowel sound at the same time. So we have rage, rouge. You can see once again that the front of my mouth is not changing the r sound, but it is allowing you to put that sound into a word. Both of those words start with a r, but it's the same if the R were to be put in the middle. For example, with the word garage, it would still be garage, garage, garage. If we have the word parents in French, parents, parents. Or if we have the word restaurants, restaurant, restaurant. You see? If you're still a little stuck, what I recommend doing is practicing the r sound with every vowel after. So, ra, ru, ri. The more you practice, like I said, the more natural it will become, the more familiar your body is going to be to producing that sound, and the more automatic it will be to make the proper sound. So now we've covered how to make the isolated sound, how to put it into words, but now I want to talk about specific consonants that, when attached to the R, are super difficult for anglophones. For example, we have TR. If you have a word like travail in French, that means work. There's also PR in French, prendre, the verb to take, prendre. We also have GR, grands-parents, grands-parents, which means grandparents. And finally, there is dr. For example, drogue, drogue, which means drugs. The reason why these attachments to the French R are so difficult is because in English, when we see dr, we think dr, like driving, or when we see tr, we think traction. But in French, you need to take the isolated sound of the consonant. So for example, with tr, we have t, t, and then we have the French R in the back of the throat. So you're not creating a new sound when the two are together, you are just taking both of the sounds and smushing them. This is super difficult, but the only way to get better is to practice and practice and practice. What you can do is take a word, for example, grandparents, grands-parents. You can start by pronouncing the G and the R more far apart, and then incrementally make them come closer and closer together. So, grands-parents, grands-parents, grands-parents. This is something, I know I just did that really quickly, might have sounded very strange, but that will help you if you practice the isolated sounds and have them come closer and closer together rather than creating a new sound altogether that does not exist in French. So some examples, for the TR we have travail, attraper, attraper. For PR we have prendre, pris, presque, presque. For GR, as I said, we have grands-parents, Grenoble, Grenoble. And for DR, you can try, as I said, drogue, as well as adresse, adresse. Of course, pause this video anytime you want to stop and practice a sound. Like I said before, you should try to record yourself so that later on you can hear your progress. And the last thing that I want to touch on is sometimes the R is silent. So if you have, for example, infinitive verbs that end in ER, that means verbs that are not conjugated. For example, if you have the verb manger, manger. You have the verb ending in ER, but you are not pronouncing the R. Something that anglophones have a lot of trouble with is understanding how to identify when a letter is not going to be pronounced in French. This is something I'm going to make a video on in a few weeks, so be sure to subscribe if you want to stick around for that. But for now, just keep in the back of your mind that sometimes the R is not pronounced, and keep on practicing how to pronounce it for the words that do require its sound. Now, as promised in the beginning of the video, I'm going to give you the same long sentences in R that you've already practiced. If you've recorded yourself making these sentences, be sure to record yourself again so that you can hear if you've made any progress, or you can hear where you need to maybe practice a little bit more. If you want to practice, pause the video, and after a couple of seconds, I'm going to give you the correct pronunciation in French.
Un reptile ressemble à son rival rose. Une roche roule avec rage le long de la rampe rustique. Un ridicule repris de justice se reproche ses rêves romantiques. Un tracteur rouillé ne rajeunit pas.
Don't worry if some of the sounds in those sentences are still very foreign to you. I know that there are some nasals, there are some differences between the U and the U, but those are things that I will be touching on in future videos. So again, make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss those. And remember, the most important thing is to keep practicing to make progress. It's okay if you don't sound perfect right now. The point is to get better and better and to be more familiar with how to pronounce the R in French. I also encourage you to make your own French sentences with as many R's as possible. Feel free to put them in the comments down below so that other people can read them and get more practice as well. If you got any value out of this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you want to see more of my videos, don't forget to subscribe. I'm actually trying to hit my first 10 subscribers in a month. So if you want to be one of those first 10, you know what to do. And that's all for now. À la prochaine!